For bestowing upon me this honor to lend my voice, my efforts daily to your empowerment. Today, Madam Speaker, I join my colleagues in this place to support the Mental Health Bill 2022. Madam Speaker, in light of so many pressing matters that impact our country, I wish to clearly signal my intention to address a number of very important matters that impact our country. As those issues, Madam Speaker, in many ways are triggers to the anxiety, the depression, the pressure that many of our people are under. Madam Speaker, before I begin, let me address the communication that was made by the Prime Minister only so much as to say, I was stunned at the brevity and to a large extent the hollowness of the statement relative to FTX. We are facing a substantial risk to our financial services sector. And one would have expected that since the international community eyes are trained on the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, that on this occasion, that this Davis-Cooper administration would have thought it necessary to break its silence much earlier and with a far more comprehensive statement, given the gravity of this issue. Madam Speaker, whenever there is a vacuum and a silence or an absence of explanation or putting in context of such a serious situation as a meltdown of a massive company that is registered here in the Bahamas, that vacuum will be filled by others, many of whom are enemies of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And they would seek.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Cat Island, Ramkey, St. Salvador.
Yeah, first of all, Madam Speaker, the member has to be very careful because you don't understand what has been happening. You don't understand what's been happening. If you listen, no, I can lecture you because you don't understand. No, listen. No, this is not about idea. This is a lecture on what the facts are.
Members.
I'm telling you what the facts are. I'm not lecturing. No. I've done that. If you listen to what I've said, yeah, you would know what I've said. You said, right? If you listen to what I've said, because, Madam Speaker, again, he says where there's a void. Again, Mr. Speaker, we are debating the Mental Health Act. We are doing that, right? Mr. Speaker, the FTX, what he has to appreciate is that the exchange that is registered, and I said it in my statement, right? FTX, the exchange that has been licensed by the Bahamas, is a separate entity than that which is which the other jurisdictions are dealing with. We took, if you listen to me, we took action locally to ensure that we protect the jurisdiction. See, as I'm saying, facts are unfolding. You don't jump ahead of yourself to make these cheap political shots. Understand what the facts are. They're still unfolding. Understand what the difference between the various entities. I mentioned it. Need go no further. And you have to be careful what you're saying because the matter is still being before the courts. Yes. So I try to be as sanguine as possible, so as not to say that I'm influencing the proceedings going on to court. That's why brevity. That's why I just settled the salient facts.
And that's why require.
Right? And that's what responsibility requires on my part.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
Speaker, brevity and hollowness of the member of Cat Island's statement, in my view, left a vacuum that permits enemies of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas who wish to mischaracterize the regulatory environment in the Bahamas for their benefit. Madam Speaker, I would have thought that the Prime Minister would have done one of several things in addition to what he said. One thing the Prime Minister could have done today is to say to the Bahamian people, we have taken the required steps to do the following. One, through the Minister of Labor, ensure that all Bahamians who work for this institution, that we are in fact making sure their entitlements, their benefits, all matters would be dealt with. Secondly, the Prime Minister could have addressed the issue on whether or not a study has been commissioned that the private sector who have concerns.
The chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Fort Charlotte.
Mr. Speaker, on a point of order, and the point of order, Madam Speaker, is Rule 30, and I wish to take the this Honourable House Rule 30, Sub Rule 20. Any reference to a matter awaiting or under adjudication in a court will not be permitted unless the Speaker's discretion, that reference will not interfere in any material way with that court matter. It is a matter that the House can take notice that this matter is before the Supreme Court of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. A provisional liquidator had been appointed, and I am advised that an official liquidator has been appointed, or is likely to be appointed, and the matters to which the honourable member has addressed are specifically proposed by the law in the liquidator. In other words, the emoluments, security of staff, of trade creditors, of investors, all of these matters are under the direct supervision and control of the Supreme Court of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. The liquidator is an officer of the court. And therefore, not only is it against the rules, but it may interfere as if the Parliament is interfering with another branch of government which has direct carriage of this matter. I would, through you, Madam Speaker, that the honourable member from Marco City govern himself accordingly.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Member for Marco City.
Madam Speaker,
I would ask that we now refrain, and all members refrain from those matters now that is presently present before the court. We will have a time in this place when I feel that when we can debate that, but as it now may be, those matters are presently before the court of the Bahamas, and we have to comply by those rules and regulations. So I would ask all members to refrain. And you know, I have made a prior, and this goes back to me just saying that in this place, I don't know what it is, why I can never be respected when I make a ruling, that we will try to stick to script, which is the Mental Health Act. And I know that we want to debate this FDX, but there will be a time when all members will have a say. But as it may be right now, it's before the courts, and I cannot allow members to disrespect the legislative branch of our country. Okay? Thank you, Honorable Member.
Madam Speaker,
Honorable Member for St. Anne's.
what was the rule advised by?
I didn't give a rule.
No, from the member for Fort Charlotte, which. The rule, Madam Speaker. Which was the rule? You wish to talk all day.
The Speaker's rule.
It doesn't matter what I say.
He said sub rule 30. There's no sub rule 30 on page 28. Well, then ask the gentleman behind not to cloud your response. Yes, but what was
Members.
What was the rule, Madam Speaker?
The Speaker's rule.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to be aware of this rule. I'm looking in the book. I'm not sure why it's escaping him now.
When the Speaker has ruled, the matter is finished. And the rule says any reference to
What's the number? What's the number? That's all I'm asking.
under adjudication in a court shall not be permitted unless the Speaker's discretion that reference will not interfere in any material way with the court matter. That is the rule. But the Speaker has ruled. I mean, we going over this again?
Sal Andros, the Speaker recognized myself. I don't know who you're representing as being disrespectful. No, she recognized me. The gentleman from Fort Charlotte.
Honorable members.
She never recognized
Honorable members.
She never recognized him.
Are you serious? No. Marco, say to me.
Madam Speaker, we were elected to address issues that impact our jurisdiction. And so, Madam Speaker, I close this segment relative to the points I made earlier by simply saying this. It's important that as policymakers, we tell the world that we have done everything possible to make sure that we have a sound regulatory environment. The Bahamas has been one of the leaders internationally. And that isn't only as it relates to the broad regulatory environment, that we intend within the digital asset space to continue to be a leader in the global community. And notwithstanding what has happened, the goal is to ensure that we are a blue chip jurisdiction. That's what I would have expected to hear from a sitting prime minister. And no, it was not said. Let me also say, Madam Speaker, that today, as we address the mental health bill, I wish to commend all of those public servants, the international agencies that would have contributed, including PAHO, the mental health professionals in the Bahamas who played a leading role in helping to shape this legislation over the many years. I wish to recognize the work done by one of our colleagues who is not in this place at this time, but he and his staff who shepherded the legislation and, of course, sent it to the Attorney General's office, and to the credit of this administration, they have now brought it here to Parliament. Let me say, Madam Speaker, that this is an important step forward. Madam Speaker, this is the modernization of the Mental Health Act. The reality is, much of the good practices put in place by mental health professionals, those acts are not yet codified in law, and today, this exercise seeks to codify many of those best practices. Madam Speaker, what is also true is that by us debating this bill today, we are drawing awareness to those citizens in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas who have been disadvantaged by our insensitivity or sometimes by our indifference as a population. I would note, Madam Speaker, that as policymakers, one of the chief culprits on making mental illness a pejorative are policymakers. It is one of those things in the arsenal of political parties that they tend to use and direct at others. And you can hear from some of the jokes from the seat that we have not gotten the message yet. Madam Speaker, today, I believe that we are taking an important step in addressing a number of issues: awareness, the need for additional resources, for staffing as well as for facilities. And Madam Speaker, my colleagues will talk in greater depth about each aspect of this bill. I wish to, before I transition, make the point that one of the glaring gaps in this bill and in our overall approach to this matter is the absence or the scarcity of resources to do many of the things that are required. One of the speakers earlier, Madam Speaker, made the point that what we ought to do is persons who are homeless, people who are disadvantaged, in other words, being thrown out of their own homes, that they should, in fact, be placed in a safe facility. Madam Speaker, which facility were they referring to? Because the reality is there are so few facilities available in New Providence. Grand Bahama is even more difficult, and most of the family islands actually have no place for persons who are challenged in a way that they are unable to live with their family. So we have a resource problem, Madam Speaker. We also, Madam Speaker, have a very serious challenge in terms of the allocation of the resources that do exist to address this particular issue. Just today, reference is made in one of the dailies to the amount of persons with mental illnesses that are in prison when they should be in another facility. And just recently, 2 families are grieving because they have lost loved ones who had mental challenges and were in the Department of Corrections facility. So, Madam Speaker, we have very live and real issues that we are facing. And one good way to judge the seriousness of policymakers in general is when you have these live issues, how swiftly do you move to remedy it? So again, what steps are being taken now in light of the high level of homelessness that includes many persons who have mental illnesses? What are we doing at Fox Hill, at the corrections facility, in light of the fact that among the population, some 80 persons were mentioned in a recent article as having mental illness? What are we doing now? To hear from this administration concrete steps being taken would give pause, and it would encourage those of us that this is more than rhetoric. And so, Madam Speaker, we support this move to modernize the Mental Health Act. We support creating greater awareness, codifying best practices. We support having open, honest conversations with our population so that people know it is okay to have discussions about these issues, that we in general, men in particular, should not suffer in silence, but should seek help and have conversations that can have an impact on their mental health. Madam Speaker, having said that, I wish now, Madam Speaker, to address a number of matters that, in my view, there is a conjunction, there is a connection in part to what we're talking about. Just recently, my colleagues and I, we traveled to Abaco in order to talk with residents and entrepreneurs who were impacted by Tropical Storm Nicole in Abaco. It was then Hurricane 1, Category 1 in Grand Bahama. Madam Speaker, one of the anxieties, and I mentioned it while pledging our support to work with the government in the aftermath, in fact, in advance and in the aftermath of climatic events, one of the anxieties people have is how can they cope with repairing the homes that they have that are already damaged, but are unable in a timely fashion to receive help in making those repairs. So when a tropical system comes through, those roofs that had not been repaired from previous systems, in other words, the long list of people who were helped, this crew did not yet get help. They are anxious about the fact that they do not have access to resources to repair their roof, to fix compromised doors, windows, etc. And so there is a need, Madam Speaker, for us to move with a sense of urgency in terms of addressing the unmet needs of many of our residents in Abaco and again in Grand Bahama. I know efforts were made, Central and South Abaco, I believe the tour was fairly extensive there. North Abaco, we pick up the slack for the government. We went to North Abaco and talked to the residents on their behalf. We understand that the Deputy Prime Minister came back, had an opportunity to go into Cooperstown. The Member of Parliament, of course, he went into North Abaco, as is his job. And of course, we had an opportunity to go to Treasure Key as well to meet with residents. We did the same thing. In Grand Bahama, we went to all 5 of the constituencies before we arrived at the press conference. And so we are absolutely committed to working closely with residents and entrepreneurs in all of the islands. Madam Speaker, one of the matters that concern us, as I listen here today, the Prime Minister, the member for Cat Island, Rumkins, and Salvador spoke about the small amount of funds. Again, and we are talking about resources, Madam Speaker, whether for mental health, whether for remedying those persons negatively impacted by Dorian. He talked about the small amount of funds that was spent by the government on behalf of a private political trip. We wish to remind members opposite that what they did broke the law. We want to know what is the remedy to them having broken the law, and we want to see the figures. Mentioning that it's a small amount does not fly with the Bahamian people. What is the amount? We heard very small amounts, but we know a trip from the Bahamas to Bermuda is an expensive proposition. How much was it? And can we have the figures laid here in the House of Assembly? We will not, the public will not forget the Bermuda Triangle and the decisions made by this government, the arrogance to spend public money on a private political initiative. Madam Speaker, it was a gross error of judgment, but what is also true is that it broke the law. There are no provisions that facilitate that. I challenge the Prime Minister to lay on the table the incidences that he mentioned where this has been done before by other administrations. I presume he's talking about past F&M and past PLP administration. He ought to bring the facts. But even in bringing them, it does not make it legal. Madam Speaker, let me also say that this administration, many times when it has an opportunity to engage in good governance, and we have not, on this side, we have been very responsible in acknowledging wise decisions when they are made by this administration. But this administration can only take compliments. They don't have the capacity to accept criticisms. And for this administration, politics always trumps good governance, always. At the end of the day, when faced with weighing those two, politics trumps good governance. It's not to say you haven't accomplished anything. It's not to say you're not pursuing some noble endeavors that would accrue benefit. Let me give one example. We said previously in here on the 6-legged highway, election. Stop the clock. Stop the clock.
Oh boy, I don't know.
Y'all never stop. Y'all never stop. Y'all never stop.
Hurricane supplies for campaign. Oh man, I don't know. I mean, you want to talk about yesterday. Put on the 6-leg in the north. I guess I wish north, but you probably do.
The chair recognized the honorable member for Marco City.
Madam Speaker, Mr. Deputy, one of the reasons we are having challenges finding some resources is because this government is about that business of pomp and pageantry, cocktail parties before, and then of course receptions after almost any event. There are no events that they're prepared to pass by without attaching a fun time to. Madam Speaker, while some other people are suffering. Madam Speaker, we have never taken issue with the Prime Minister doing the people's business internationally. We did the same. We traveled in order to be advocates for the Bahamas, to engage in discussions, etc. What we have taken issue with, Mr. Deputy, is the size of the delegations and whether or not it was appropriate for those persons who were on the trip to be at a meeting. So should the Prime Minister be at meetings where his minister could take care of the issue? Should the minister be at a meeting where the ambassador, and we have a record number of ambassadors, so we have no shortage of people strategically placed in almost every jurisdiction. And that is the issue. Politics trumps governance. The six-legged roundabout is symptomatic, it's emblematic of this, the mentality and arrogance of this administration. So you have the images of members of the Progressive Liberal Party on a boat in the center of a public roundabout. A public roundabout. And so if I were to come into Parliament with the F&M paraphernalia, it would be inappropriate given what the code is for how we ought to address. Are you telling me this administration has a boat, an image of their leaders, like a banana republic?
Member, the chair recognizes the honorable member for West Grand Bahama and Bimini.
Mr. Deputy, the member for Marco City seeks to suggest that the government has put in place or put on a roundabout images of members of parliament. The government has nothing to do with that at all. And if you're asking for it to be removed, then you should do that, but do not place that on the government. There are enthusiastic supporters of the PLP who today still support the direction the country is going. So please.
Thank you, honorable member. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Marco City.
This administration is creating the kind of culture. This administration is creating a culture where they believe.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for West Grand Bahama.
They are not games. When we speak in this place, we speak truth. We have nothing to do with what somebody might have done. If you have a difficulty with it, appeal to the Ministry of Works and have it removed. That's the way you do it. You're talking about how people ought to behave. That's what you ought to do. You don't come in the house and trivialize it.
Thank you, honorable member.
I think we got time for nonsense.
This administration is creating a culture where they believe that they are able to do as they wish with the people's patrimony. That's why they could spend public money to go to Bermuda for a political event. That's why they could take a roundabout that they know they have restricted people from putting signage on, and they put their sign. It is a mentality. It is a condition of the heart. It's arrogance.
Member,
that's what it is.
The chair recognizes.
Go move the boat. Go move it. Go and move it.
Marco City.
Go move it. Go move it.
The member of parliament for Marco City knows better. The member of parliament does not wish to accept that we have enthusiastic supporters of BLP. Nobody has put yours up. That's your business. At the end of the day, if you have a difficulty, appeal it to the Ministry of Works. The Progressive Liberal Party, the members of the government did not direct anyone. That is trivial nonsense. But
thank you, honorable member. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Marco City.
Yes. The enthusiastic supporters' hopes are dashed when we came in the House and represented that a hotel was sold when it was not. And after multiple delays, the hotel deal is dead. Your enthusiastic supporters
the chair
who are
recognizes.
hoping for an airport.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Exuma and Ragged Island.
Mr. Speaker,
Y'all buy the hotel, remember?
the member is an actor. And he's clearly putting on a show for somebody.
Who?
But he's crossing the line, Mr. Deputy. He is representing that somebody said the hotel was sold. He knows better. He knows full well.
So why are you doing that?
He knows that the communication was that there's a due diligence period, there's a negotiation of heads of agreement, and all of that had to be done, Mr. Speaker. He is misrepresenting. He's almost celebrating, Mr. Deputy. I find this quite curious, given that this member represents a constituency on the island of Grand Bahama. He is being most disingenuous. He is being irresponsible as a leader of the opposition, Mr. Deputy. And I ask him to desist because he knows better, or he ought to know better, Mr. Deputy.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Marco City.
Deputy, I have warned this administration over and over again not to oversell and underdeliver. We've said it over and over. We supported the member for Exuma in the decoupling.
Yeah, the chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Exuma and Ragged Island.
Speaker, I stood on a point of order. The member misrepresented to this parliament.
Members.
And I asked that he withdraw those remarks, Mr. Deputy, or they be struck from the record, Mr. Speaker.
Marco City, are you going to withdraw?
Not a possible chance. Mr. Deputy, the point I have made on more than one occasion, let me finish the statement to answer your question. What I've said on more than one occasion is that the clear impression by the member for Exuma and others have been that they have sold the hotel.
Yeah, the chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Exuma and Ragged Island.
Let me be clear. That's right. The minister, the former minister of that former failed F&M administration, he made certain representation on the floor of this house. And no matter how he tries to now change his words, he misled Parliament with what he just said. I ask that he withdraw it. If he refuses to withdraw it, Mr. Deputy, I ask that you have it stricken from the record.
Marco City, is this factual?
Mr. Deputy, let me say again for the Bahamian people.
That was a question.
This administration,
Honorable Member. Yeah, that was a question.
I've already answered. I don't intend to withdraw. So let me just be clear.
So it's factual?
Of course it's I don't intend.
We will have that stricken from the record for Marco City.
Mr. Deputy, consistently the member for Exuma
The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for West Grand Bahama.
You sit down, I will speak. If you've completed your contribution.
Mr. Deputy, I would like the same courtesies that you extend to other members to be extended to the member for Marco City. The member for Exuma has consistently, along with colleagues, come in this house and give the clear impression that the hotel was sold. He has oversold and underdelivered.
The chair recognizes.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, the chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Exuma, Ragged Island.
You've ruled on the matter. You've ruled on the matter, Mr. Speaker. And I've indicated that we've been very clear. The member needs to now appreciate that he is in the House of Assembly. He's not in the Freeport Players Theater or the Dundas setup where he performs, Mr. Speaker. This is the House of Assembly, and we're required to be responsible with what we say and not mislead or seek to mislead, Mr. Deputy.
Mr. Deputy, at the 1 o'clock hour, so I will ask for an extension to allow the member to complete. He has 10 minutes or 11 minutes and 15 seconds left.
Is there a second?
Our production. And once he finishes production, then we will take the lunch break.
Is there a second? It has been moved and seconded that the business of the House stand past 1 p.m. As many are in favor will remain seated, those opposed will stand. The motion is carried. The business of the House will proceed past 1 p.m. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Marco City.
Mr. Deputy, this administration, the member for Exuma, has consistently oversold and underdelivered in terms of the sale of the Grand Nukayan. So today, despite having supported the decoupling of the sale of the hotel and, of course, the development at the harbor, we supported them. We were cautiously optimistic. And in this house, over and over, we cautioned this administration.
Get the time.
So, Mr. Deputy, the airport. Today, we have not had a partner identified, yet this administration is suggesting that they are going to have a sale, they're going to have a developed airport by 2025. In the absence of a partner, in the absence of the resources, in the absence of a design for the airport, how are you able to reasonably predict the timetable for the development of the airport? How? How is it possible? How? Overselling, under-delivering. Overselling, under-delivering.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Exum and Ragged Island.
Mr. Deputy, we're on public record outlining the plan for the Grand Bahama International Airport. But this member who now stands and acts as the leader of the opposition served in the cabinet of the former administration for 2 years.
2 years.
And they did nothing, Mr. Deputy.
Zero. Zero. Nothing.
He is shameless, Mr. Deputy, to stand here and seemingly celebrate that nothing had been done by this administration. Mr. Deputy, since we came to office, we made deliberate and significant efforts to improve the airport that was left by them. Where they did nothing, we improved lights and generators and elevators, Mr. Deputy, and we renovated the domestic terminal as is ongoing, and we brought airlift. Airlift from Florida and Charlotte and Raleigh and Toronto and Montreal, Mr. Deputy. So now he stands and he acts like he cares, Mr. Deputy. But in 2 years, he did nothing as a member of the cabinet. And a parliamentarian, a representative,
What you say he did
an MP for Marco City, he did nothing.
Nothing?
And now he stands and he acts like he cares, Mr. Deputy. He is shameless.
One second. Yeah. I'm just trying to find the rule of relevance here because we have to stick to the debate and let's stay focused because we just flip-flopping all over the place. No, that's both sides. No, honorable members, that's both sides. So there's a rule of relevance. Let's stick to the debate, please. Thank you. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Marco City.
Mr. Deputy, I transitioned from the airport and the hotel by ending on that segment as I began. There is a problem with overselling and under-delivering. And that is emblematic of this administration. Public relations rather than delivery on substance. That's what the issue is. That's what the issue is.
Where's the deal?
And so we want to know, show us the deal. Show who is the partner for the airport. How do you know it's going to be finished in 2025? Yeah. Show us the deal.
That's another promise.
When you posture as if you are the salvation of an island, then deliver. And so you have a historical record of not delivering West End and Bimini. You shouldn't get in this conversation. You have a historical record of not delivering.
Members,
Mr. Deputy.
honorable members.
I know I struck a chord. I know I struck a chord, West End. I know I struck a chord. No footprints. You can't find a building, not a community center, not a park. I mean, just years of being there, no footprint.
Honorable members.
It's painful.
Yeah,
It's painful.
yeah.
Make a lot of noise in the talk.
Honorable members. Honorable members.
That's it.
Senance.
That's it. Thank you, Senan. Emasculation. You can hold it down, no fake. Huh? Welcome back, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker.
And there will be order in this place.
Madam Speaker, a massive delegation went to COP27. And what was unusual about it was, Madam Speaker, the Minister for the Environment and the Minister of State for the Environment were noticeably missing. You're talking about the largest environmental conference in the world, and the two most relevant senior cabinet ministers to deal with that portfolio were missing off the trip. The question is why? The question is why?
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Exuma and Ragged Island.
Madam Speaker.
It was at 9:53.
We came from Joe Losky.
Madam Speaker, now this member wants to act as if he is the Prime Minister, making my point of order again is
members.
My point of order again is he is misleading this place once more, Madam Speaker. I asked the member on relevance to focus on the issues at hand. The Prime Minister, in his wisdom, makes the determination as to where his resources are and what they are to be doing when, Mr. Speaker. And it's not the prerogative of the leader of the opposition.
Members, there's a member on the floor.
It's not the prerogative of the leader of the opposition to direct the Prime Minister as to where his team ought to be. So we ask again that he focus on the relevance at hand, Madam Speaker. This is going from the ridiculous now to the sublime, Madam Speaker.
I left this. Hold on, honorable members. I left these proceedings for all but less than 10 minutes, and I left us debating the mental health bill. Now, what are we now debating? What are we now debating? Now, may I exercise this rule? I'll take you to page 72. Oh, yes, go to the page. Go to number 2. 88-2. You put on my glasses so I don't miss anything, okay? The Speaker in the House or the Chairman in committee, after having called the attention of the House or committee to the conduct of a member who persists in irrelevance or in tedious repetition either of his own arguments or of the arguments used by other members in debate, may direct the member to discontinue his speech and resume his seat. Now, I have asked members to let's stick to the point. Let's stick to the point, which is the mental health bill. We will resume these other points at another date. I have a long list of speakers here, and we will stick to the mental health bill. All these other, I don't know what to call it, delays. Okay? We will stop. It will cease. And I have heard the Deputy Speaker call, and I have not heard any member comply. Okay? Now she reach. Mental health bill. And it's after the 1 o'clock hour. I'm sure members want to get
Madam Speaker,
out of
let
here.
me. Sorry, you're through, Madam Speaker. Let me.
Yeah, are you through?
No, I'm not. I'm just getting started, Madam Speaker.
Okay.
Madam Speaker.
9:53 on the clock. Let's get it.
Madam Speaker, there is a tremendous amount of anxiety in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. This administration is not solely responsible for that. All of us in different ways contribute to the tremendous stress and pressure our people are under. So when I come and hit this place, I come in to help relieve that pressure. A part of relieving that pressure is holding this administration accountable for the decisions that they make. Madam Speaker, we're talking about anxiety. We're talking about anxiety, Madam Speaker. We're talking about anxiety. Madam Speaker, the the anxiety that many Bahamians have, even as we discuss the mental health bill, is how are they going to pay the many bills that are heaped upon their head? Because many of them are not as fortunate as many of us in this place. Madam Speaker, I raised in a previous debate the fact that the increase in fuel charge and electricity, Madam Speaker, was not automatic. That is what was asserted by members of the Davis Cooper administration in general, the member for Fort Charlotte in particular. We laid in this House a document that clearly showed that the member for Fort Charlotte was privy to recommendations that he declined to follow that resulted in what we believe now is a $100 million plus expense on the backs of the Bahamian people. We asked him not to persist because there was clear evidence that he got the recommendation, could have relieved this burden, this pressure, this toll pressure on Bahamians, this anxiety, this increase from 10.5 cents on the fuel charge to 27.6, 163% increase in fuel charge. Madam Speaker, I'd like to further support what I had said previously about the member being fully aware. I'd like to read into your hearing, into the hearing of the public, the member who acknowledges that he received recommendations on the hedge program and responded to it. Madam Speaker, so a letter was written.
Want to remember,
A letter was written.
Haven't we addressed the hedge program?
No, Madam Speaker, I ask you to permit me to continue to do my job on behalf of the tens of thousands of Bahamians who are subjected to bills that they did not have to be subjected to. And the pressure that they face today is in part because of a failure to execute. But that's not a failure to execute is not as bad as a failure to acknowledge that you knew that you had options that you did not pursue. And so, Madam Speaker, I wish
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Fort Charlotte.
On this is a point of order, and the point of order is relevance, Madam Speaker. The point of order is relevance because what the honourable member has not disclosed, and his informers ought to have shared with him, is a hedge. First of all, BPL not in a position to fund the hedge. It's a determination by the Ministry of Finance. The Ministry of Finance in October.
How many times you can
October made a determination that the proposal that the honorable member is referring to was not supported. Only the Ministry of Finance can support using the public treasury's money in an undertaking which it is not persuaded at that time, given what it was before the Ministry of Finance, that it was not in the interest of the country at that time. The honorable member, Madam Speaker, has a draft cabinet paper which only could have been its addressed to the Minister of Finance. So they understood where the determination was to be made. The draft cabinet paper is addressed to the Minister of Finance for the Minister of Finance consideration. The Minister of Finance communicated that based on what was presented, it was not supported. It was not supported. That determination was communicated in October of 2021. And what is the relevance? It's new revelation.
In this house, I raised the question, did the minister with responsibility for Fort Charlotte or the prime minister, were they aware of the recommendations that were made? Madam Speaker, I really need your protection because this is an important point. Please, Madam Speaker, protect me from them. I raised.
Honourable member, you have raised a question.
Yes.
As it relates to the hedge.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I just got back up. He can't have a double point of order and I've not even spoken.
Right.
So
I'm asking.
Can I
in
complete
the
my
past,
statement?
have you raised the question about that?
No, Madam Speaker.
There's a question already.
Madam Speaker, there are multiple sides of this one issue. So I'm not sure what the member for Exuma is talking about. But Madam Speaker, the member for Fort Charlotte responded, Madam Speaker, he just had a point of order. I have not spoken yet. How does he get a second point of order? Madam Speaker, here's the point. The member for Fort Charlotte has just confirmed what I asked several weeks ago. Were you aware of the recommendations that had the potential to save the Bahamian people over $100 million? His answer on his feet and the Prime Minister's answer on his feet was no, they did not see any recommendation. The member for Fort Charlotte, just on his feet, before I could lay the two documents that I have with me today, on his feet admitted that the Minister of Finance was fully aware and rejected the recommendations. Madam Speaker, he admitted on his feet that the Minister of Finance saw the recommendations and rejected it. He also indicated that he also rejected the recommendation. And so, Madam Speaker, before you answer that, you don't want
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Fort Charlotte.
Madam Speaker, when this matter was raised, no, Madam Speaker, the rules require that if you have a question, that the question is provided, that the minister would have an opportunity to review the file, have an answer, which is really after reviewing the file, and put forward, which there are a number of questions on the notice paper.
On the notice already.
Those questions are being reviewed by the relevant technical officers, and answers are being prepared. When the honorable member raised this as if we were in a court of law, responses were given. I have checked with the financial secretary, and I have confirmed with the financial secretary that the documents which were provided were also provided to the Ministry of Finance. The Ministry of Finance, and I'll be happy to lay the response of the financial secretary. It was considered and communicated that based on what was put to the Ministry of Finance, the proposal was not accepted. And some questions were asked which were not addressed satisfactorily. But what the Ministry of Finance explained to me, Madam Speaker, what the Ministry of Finance explained to me is that any commitment of a hedge strategy would represent an obligation. BPL was not in a fiscal position to assume that itself. And therefore, through the IDB and the Ministry of Finance, both of which have the requisite technical capacity, reviewed what was put forward and did not accept it. That was a determination by the Ministry of Finance. Now, if the honorable member were to put forward a question, the Ministry of Finance will prepare the answer and provide the answer.
Put your question during notice system, not now.
I gotta remember.
Madam Speaker, just in case persons are just joining us. We have asked, Madam Speaker, we have asked, in case the only thing they heard, Madam
421.
Madam Speaker, the member for Fort Charlotte, in case that's all they heard for the first time, what the member of Fort Charlotte should have been answering is a question that was asked of him probably a month ago. The question was whether or not the fuel increase was inevitable, one. Secondly, he indicated on his feet, so did the Prime Minister indicate on their feet, that they were unaware of any recommendations around the hedge program, on their feet. The member for Fort Charlotte has just confirmed that not only he was aware, but the Minister of Finance, the Prime Minister, was aware.
Allow.
You weren't listening.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Fort Charlotte.
Madam Speaker, not to belabor this point, what I indicated is that subsequently I spoke with the financial secretary, which is what would have happened had the question been put according to the rules. An investigation would be done and answers would be prepared. And well, it is sincere. I mean, what do I have to hide? And thank you for the compliment, even though it is said. But so the financial secretary confirmed, Madam Speaker, and if the honorable member were to put forward within the rules the question, answers would be prepared by the technical people after the review of the file and put the facts forward.
Thank you, honorable member.
Madam Speaker, the member for Fort Charlotte has confirmed that what we were saying all along was the truth, which he denied over and over and over again. And now, finally faced with unimpeachable facts, he now points out that the Prime Minister, the Minister of Finance, was also aware. And so the 163% increase in electricity over 13 months is a result of the dereliction of duty. A decision, bad judgment. Would you like me to retrieve that? Yeah. Bad judgment by the Davis, I can spare you this time, Chester, the Davis administration. Who? What you call it? It's a dereliction of duty. So again, what we want is for the member and the Prime Minister to confirm on their feet that they did get the recommendations, and they rejected it. As a result of rejecting it, it's a 163% increase in fuel charge for the Bahamian people. It's a 35 to 45% increase in electricity for the vulnerable Bahamians that they claim that they love so much. It's a near 100% increase for those Bahamians who are middle class or who are entrepreneurs. They have on their feet misled Parliament. And so, Madam Speaker, as I take my seat, I would like to lay the correspondence to show that we support the mental health bill. But we are expecting the Prime Minister to make the necessary decisions in light of the fact that on their feet, they have misled this Parliament. The member for Fort Charlotte misled this Parliament, and he just confirmed, so through him, he has confirmed that the Prime Minister did. That his words, his own words, that the Prime Minister was aware of the recommendations that he said, I had no idea about. And so, Madam Speaker, with those few words, let me say, we have some very serious challenges in this country. We do not have a problem with members opposite working on behalf of the Bahamian people. We have a problem with parties and receptions when it's not necessary. We have a problem with people riding first class when our people can't even afford economy. We have a problem with them not paying school board workers in Grand Bahama. Can't take care of a dilapidated building and residence in Turtle Key. Can't help the flooding in North Abaco. That's what we have a problem with, Madam Speaker. We have a problem. We have a problem with them not addressing the proliferation of unregulated development in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, even when two members of their side say they are not doing enough, Madam Speaker. Two, North and South Abaco standing up for their people, Madam Speaker. That's what we have a problem with, Madam Speaker. And so we ask them to do the right thing, Madam Speaker. They're sending people in almost every constituency.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for North Abaco.
My point of order, Madam Speaker, is to correct the statement, a misleading statement by the member. It's okay to stand in here and put on your show. That's your choice. It's okay if you want to base your career on this emotional outburst and whatever else. I was elected by the people of North Abaco because of my character. I'm speaking to the speaker, but I'm looking at him. I was elected because of my character. I don't spend much time talking because I'm a person of action. Yes. Please, when you refer to the member of North Abaco, let it be factual. Don't mislead this country to believe that you and I just have side conversation where I've given you information about my good party and government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Well, if you want to refer to the papers in your contribution, please state that. However, when you stand here, forgive me, Madam Speaker, however, when the member stand here and make a bold statement about what the member for North Abaco says, he leads me with the impression that he's speaking some experience he had with me. The gentleman and I, under no circumstances, have ever had a conversation. And I am not at all going to sit silent while the opposition continue to utilize, I guess, what he called my Ricky or my inexperience in this place to further strengthen his debate or his argument or his outburst in his contribution. It ain't gonna work for me. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, honorable member. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Central and South Abaco.
South Abaco. We call everybody here, we call everybody here and apologize.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Firstly, it's definitely misleading. I actually commended the ministers and this administration for actually taking a positive step forward in our ever escalating problem. But what I did say is over 35 years of F&M representation in Abaco, nothing of significance was done and has caused the plight that we're in today. That's what I did say. And I would further that by saying that in 35 years of representation, they have not only caused the plight that we're in today, but they systematically dismantled most of the departments in Abaco for them to function properly, closing the youth and sports and culture office, dismantling public works, dismantling many other departments that we are having to now fix and rectify and bring Abaco back to where it was before. That is what I did say. For clarification.
Thank you, honorable member.
Madam Speaker, I just like to read into the hearing of the public. So this is not about. Hey, this is not about. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, this is not about private. Listen, Madam Speaker, this is not about. Madam Speaker, let me finish. Let me finish the point. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, let me finish the point. Madam Speaker, let me finish. Madam Speaker, do the right thing. Madam Speaker, I wish to just conclude this thought. Madam Speaker, members, Madam Speaker, ask him to open this again. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker's recognized me. No, Madam Speaker.
Chair recognizes the honorable member for Grand.
Madam Speaker, you recognize.
Honorable members, honorable members, honorable members, honorable members.
Madam Speaker, you recognize me.
Yes, I recognize you, honorable member. I recognize you, and your time is now completed.
Madam Speaker, if you recognize me.
I have honorable members, honorable members, honorable members. Honorable member, let me say this. Let me say this. I recognized you. You rose to your feet, and your time is now expired. Honorable member, honorable member, honorable member. Honorable member, let me say this. Let me say this. And I heard and I listened to your speech in its entirety. And I understand where you were going with some of it and where you wasn't going with some of it. But let me tell you something. At the onset, when we began here this morning, one thing this sitting member said and this speaker said is that we would not move away from the mental health bill today. And let me tell you something, the lack of order, the lack of disrespect for this chair is just overwhelming. Okay? Overwhelming. And so, you want me to give you extra time when you did not comply with the order of this chair. When you did not on, you were talking about hedge, you were talking about so many other things, drawing all kinds of other conclusions. Now, if you want to get back, when we come back, you can rise on your points of orders. I will, whatever. You will rise. Hold on, let me finish. You will rise on your point of order when other members are speaking if you want to speak to anything that they're saying. But rise up right now. I will ask the member for West Grand Bahama and Bimini to move for the suspension. I will now ask, listen here, I am taking charge of this house. I am taking charge of this process.
Abuse, you have no point of order. We now move, Madam Speaker.
Seconded that the business of this, thank you, honorable member.
Pay no attention to the move.
It has been moved and seconded that the business of this house stands suspended until the 3 p.m. hour. All those in favor shall remain seated. Those opposed will stand. The business of this house stands suspended until 3 p.m.